for YouTube Live. All right. I believe we are live now. I am taking it down. Anyway, welcome to Authors Alcove. I am your host, Agnes Wolf, where we dive deep into world building, publishing, and marketing and the magic behind the words. I'm your host, Agnes Wolf. Today, we're venturing a little bit off of fantasy into Gothic horror. Of course, it deals with paranormal, so I am still in the fantastical world today. And today we have award-winning author Beth Castrodale. She is a novelist who has written 5 books, one that you can get for free from her newsletter. So definitely check out her website. It will be in my show notes. And then the other 3, I believe she said that there was a suspense and then literary fiction. Today's, though, is the Gothic horror. It's the novel The Inhabitants. It brings together haunted Victorian mansions, supernatural forces, and powerful contemporary themes like resilience, motherhood, and even the quiet monsters of our everyday lives. One of the things that I am definitely going to ask her about is the MeToo movement. That's something that is present in this particular novel. Well, anyway, Beth and I will be talking about this in just a moment, but first I wanted to give you guys a quick reminder about the Author Alcove book giveaway. So we're just wrapping up the spring giveaway. We had books like The Breeding, we had Sinister Love, and then several others. You can go to authorsalcove.org in order to see what we have, scroll through them. We will have her book. I have not received it. I should have it probably today or tomorrow. Watch, as soon as I get off of here, it's here, and I'll be able to. I'll be talking about that next week, showing you that. It's a cute cover, yellow. Definitely check it out. It'll be at the very bottom of the website until the summer book giveaway launches June 1st. Another book set that we have for the summer book giveaway is, it's the first 3 in a series about it's called the Arcana Oracle series. And what's fascinating about this particular book is that it is based on tarot cards. It's actually the person who wrote the modern day, or created the modern day. And so each book follows 2 of the tarot cards. So she's hoping for a total of 11. Sounds absolutely fascinating. I have not started it yet either. I just talked to her last week. Well, anyway, let's get into the book that we are here for today with Beth. Welcome, Beth. How are you today?
I'm great, thanks. It's so great to be here. Thank you for that lovely introduction. It's such a pleasure to be with you.
So I'm going to start off with a fun question. I feel like we need something kind of fun. So if you could invite any fictional character, living, dead, or ghostly, to a dinner with you, who would you choose?
Oh gosh,
I
that's
had to
such a
ask
good
a hard question.
question. Let me think about that. I would say, I mean, this is a little bit on topic, but I'm thinking about the one of the books I might talk about today that was an inspiration for my book was Henry James, The Turn of the Screw. And the governess in that novel is never mentioned, but she's such an interesting character.
Ooh, looks like we have a bad connection. We have a bad connection. Oh no. Are you there, Beth?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. We have a bad
Okay,
connection.
let's see. It says internet connection is unstable, but
Yeah, on
now
yours
it looks
it's
like
freezing up on your side. Okay. Oh, you're there.
oh
You're starting to move again.
okay, okay. Good. Sorry about that.
All right. So who did you say you started to say, and then you started to explain why?
Yeah, I was thinking of the narrator in Henry James's The Turn of the Screw. And
Uh,
as you may remember, she was a governess who comes on to tutor these kind of scary kids at this mansion out in the country, and she has some very strange experiences. And I would just love to pick her brain more about what she experienced. So I would really enjoy that.
That's awesome. I think for me, I was thinking about this while you were talking, is Luna Lovegood, like very from the Harry Potter series, because she's so flighty. And like I feel like me and her would have a lot in common. Just a little bit
That would
eccentric.
be fun. That's a great choice. She'd be a fun invitee for sure. Love that.
Anyway, so Gothic horror can be a tricky, it blends suspense, the supernatural, and deep emotional themes. Although this is a fantasy podcast, I chose your book because it does have the supernatural vibes, which I love. Do you just mind sharing what it was like, or exactly what it was that drew you to either this genre in general or the story itself?
You know, one thing is like ever since I was a kid, I love spooky stories and I loved spooky books and TV shows and movies. And I actually like to write my own spooky stories that I illustrated. So I've always been a huge fan of them. But I think like what really intrigued me is, I think in the Gothic genre, often it's a house or a space that is like a character. So I was really drawn to that aspect of the Gothic tradition, especially a house that has that sense of foreboding and mystery. So that was kind of the inhabitants. I really started thinking about the house as being a space that wanted to get into and figure out what was spooky about it and how the characters interact with that spookiness. So
That was actually going to be my very next question was that the house in your novel is both a setting, but it's also kind of a character itself. How did you decide to develop that? And what was it about the house that made you really feel like it was its own character?
I've always loved old houses, especially Victorian ones. When I was a little girl, I kind of lived in a suburban house that wasn't that old, and I always had this dream of living in an old house with shadows and interesting corners and everything. So I thought it would really be interesting to, like older houses have a lot of history, and then this house in particular. In the story, I have it having been constructed by a 19th century architect who believed that his creations could influence the mind. So I thought that would be kind of an interesting spin, and that he's long departed this world, but his house that humans inhabit get to experience his sort of ideas about how to affect the human mind. And so the protagonist gets right in the middle of that, and she's actually a visual artist, a painter. So I see her as being especially attuned to those physical details and being very sensitive to them. So I think maybe I think it started with a house, and I figured who's a character who could really appreciate that space, and I thought an artist really would. So that's how things kind of got cooking in the beginning.
I do want to ask you about the protagonist, but I do have to ask you before I ask you this is, so do you believe in ghosts and the supernatural? Do you believe that ghosts are real?
You know what? I get that question so often, and I would like to say that I'd like to believe that they're real. I've never like I've had some weird experiences that I'm not sure, but I will say this is a total digression. I'll just keep it brief. But as part of research for this book, I thought I would write a piece about mediums. I'd never visited a medium, and I actually visited a couple of them. The first one, it was not it didn't work out. I mean, I thought there were a lot of it's just I wasn't getting a strong sense that she was really interpreting anything correctly. And the second one was just mind blowing. I mean, it really she just nailed things about that. There's no way she could have known about my family and some things in my life and people who've passed on in my life. And it really opened my mind to the idea that maybe our conscious mind might survive our physical death, the death of our physical body. So that maybe that's not ghost per se, but I'm definitely more open to that idea. And it's actually been being researched at the University of Virginia in a division of perceptual studies. So that's getting a little bit of, there's still a lot of skepticism, but I think more researchers are kind of open to that. And I'm kind of following that line of research with great interest. So sorry for
Cool.
long answer to a quick question, but
No, that's what I want. That's what I want. Actually, I had a tarot reader on my podcast last week. She's the one that wrote this particular book. And she did, and I've never had tarot readers before. People have told me that I'm like sensitive and stuff. Like I don't really, I'm not sure what I really believe on all that. But I have been told that people sense things about me. Anyway, so she actually did the tarot reading, and she said she was surprised because she got two cards, which I guess you normally only get one. I don't really know anything about tarot reading. And but what I found interesting is she pulled a card that talked a lot about community and me wanting to build community. And that's a really big part of who I am, which I guess you can kind of tell based on the fact that I do this podcast. But the other one was that she also had the devil card. And the devil card for her, she felt was saying that like it was because I'm struggling to build that because of fear. And it's so funny because that's what me and my husband have been talking about is that there's like that fear of like, you know, I just found that very fascinating. And so like I'm like, hmm.
That's really intriguing, isn't it? Especially since you and your husband were just kind of discussing it, and it's also interesting the devil. Like I would take that so literally. I'd be like, oh no, like. But it's interesting how it's kind of symbolic of some other kind of thing that's kind of bedeviling you, right?
Yeah. Either that or she was just totally like, okay, this is alive. I'm not going to tell her the truth of what really this means.
I'm sure there's no actual devil on your heels. I'm sure.
Anyway, so I wanted to ask you about your protagonist. So, first off, did she believe in ghosts before going in, or is this something brand new to her? And how did you choose? Well, you kind of already talked a little bit about how you chose her, but like, what was it that really drew you to this person? Her name's Nilda, correct?
That's correct. Yeah, and that's a great question about the what she believes in. I mean, one of the things that Nilda is dealing with, her mother, who she just loved, recently died. So she's grieving the loss of her mother, and she's grieving a few different things. She's had a relationship breakup, and so grief is very much a part of Nilda's life. And one thing that she wishes passionately that she could believe in ghosts, because like she sees them like if only I could, have some connection with my mother. And she actually gets addicted to these paranormal reality TV shows. They become like appointment television for her. So she's like very much wanting to believe. And then as the novel progresses, she kind of gets her wish answered in maybe ways that she wasn't expecting. And just in terms of like the why I chose her as the character, again, definitely I felt like she was visually attuned to the features of the house, but also I've just personally been fascinated with artists in the creative process, and I wanted to kind of get into her process and her what is going on with that in a way that has some larger resonance in the novel. I know we are going to talk about the Me Too stuff, but it kind of runs up against that. So that was one of the reasons I thought that she would make an interesting kind of central character.
Yeah, one of the reasons why I noticed that it was had a Me Too theme was because one of your readers and reviewers praised you on how subtly you wove the Me Too themes in, so it wasn't like in your face. Why did you decide to tackle such a hot topic, and how did you do it so that way it wasn't like a political statement?
Yeah, it's interesting. When I started writing the book, I had no idea I was going to be writing about Me Too at all. Like it just kind of came upon me when I was writing Nilda's part, and I had her in her studio painting. And I know like one of the things in the early drafts I thought like she makes money as a portrait artist. She takes commissions, and that's how she gets her main feed of money. But she really just wants to work on her own kind of more abstract art. And when she inherits this house, it kind of she doesn't have to pay rent anymore, so it kind of frees her up financially to put the portrait painting aside. She just has one portrait left to do, and it's this headmaster that at this elite private school. So I kind of thought, like in the early drafts, I thought this is just a little sidelight that he's going to be like this thing to get through. But then I realized, like this guy, when I was writing about him and her, he was just something about him I just found so troubling and annoying, like his presence in the photo and like this, and so I just kind of had this thing that she has a good friend who lives nearby, and her friend comes over to visit her studio, and I just had this moment where the friend recognizes this guy in the portrait as the headmaster of a school, and he used to be her teacher. And then I thought, like seeing her reaction, I felt like there was something horrible happened between the two of them. And then I had the idea that this guy is really this Nilda realizes she's taken on this portrait commission for this guy who seriously, harmed and abused her dear friends. So she's like, I feel like it's dirty money to take this portrait money. And I thought, well, why don't I have her somehow exact revenge via portrait painting? So I figure out a way for her to do that visually within the painting and to get it on display in a way that a lot of people will find out more about this man and what he did through it. So that's a long way of saying that, I didn't set out to do that, but I thought, you know, it just kind of somewhat happened organically. And then once it got rolling, I thought I just have to move forward with this storyline because I wasn't sure I was going to keep it at first. And then it just started feeling like so, it started to feel like I got hooked into it and I just wanted to run with it. So.
What is something that after somebody reads your book that you hope that they walk away with after they read it?
You know, I think in the case of this book, I was kind of thinking about that a lot. I mean, I hope they, enjoyed the book and the experience, but I also thought like this book is so much about spaces where we live and where we exist and habit, and it could be our homes or it could be it could be anywhere, a place that's important to us. And I feel like all of us, I think, have a place that has deeply affected us. So maybe multiple places. Like I feel like there are places I've lived, even crummy little apartments that have left some kind of mark on me. And I thought maybe, one thing I guess is like maybe people will think about places in their own history that have affected them or that have left a mark on them for good or ill. Yeah, that's kind of one of the main things I was thinking of.
Kind of shifting away from like your writing process, but more like the publishing. I know that you said that your first four books you went through small press traditional, and then you do have a self-published book that where can they go to sign up for your newsletter to get your fifth book?
Yeah, yeah. So if they just go to bethcastrodale.com,
Okay, so it
they'll
is your
get a
name.
pop-up eventually where they can, so yeah, they'll, and I think it's also at the bottom of the website too,
Yeah,
but
it says
thank you for asking about that.
yeah, I saw that at the bottom. I don't know if I saw the pop-up or not, but I did see it at the bottom of your thing. And what is the genre for that particular book?
It's literary fiction, but it has a bit of magical realism in it as well.
Okay.
So I know you talk about fantasy. So it has just a little bit of that. Like it's mostly re in the real world, but then the reality gets twisted a little bit here and there in the book. So subtly magical, realistic, I think.
Yeah, I believe it's called a or Gold River.
Yes. Yep.
Yes. So like I signed up for your newsletter. I should have it in the email. But anyway, the so your so the other four you went through a small press traditional. What was your experience like, and was it different with publishing a Gothic horror compared to some of the literary fiction?
It's funny. I've all of my books have been with like small indie presses and so far it's been a good experience. I mean, I feel like there's been a lot of like closer involvement with the editorial staff. I just feel like it's a just and it's a much more longer term relationship, I think, than you would have with a lot of like, from what I've heard of friends who've been with bigger publishers, is you kind of have your moment in the sun and then things kind of move on. I feel like it's a lot longer term relationship and just a lot of editorial care that goes into it. I think the marketing, a lot of that is on the author, but I feel like that's the case with a lot of with the bigger publishers too, that really um, I think that, you need to have some skin in the game. And I would want to have skin in the game anyhow, because I feel like no one's going to care about my books getting out there more than I would. So I'm okay with that. But and what was this? I'm sorry, what was the second part of your question again?
Was it different publishing your Gothic horror compared to your other books?
There wasn't too much of a difference. It was kind of a different thing that I had to think about, myself in terms of how to market the book. I was thinking, gosh, do I go to like goth conventions or whatever? Like, you know what I mean? Like I had to kind of think a little bit like maybe people they're not necessarily interested in, this my particular book, but they're interested in ghost stories or so I was trying to think just from putting my marketing hats on, like what kind of things I needed to think differently. So, and that was fun. It's fun to think of those different ways.
Where did you find your small press publishers? Did you just do an internet search, or how did you find them?
My first publisher that published my first two books, the publisher actually, she read one of my short stories of all things, and she said, I love this short story you wrote, and I wondered if you have any novels. And I mean, that just shocked me because I've been looking for publishers and agents and everything, and I thought, oh gosh, this is just, I never expected anything like that to happen. But I automatically had a good feeling because I thought if she likes my writing, then chances are good. So the first two books went there, and then my next book, I just looked for a bunch. I just put out a bunch of feeler, sent query letters, and I actually looked for distributors, different distributors of publishers, and then looked at publishers within different distributors, and I found one. This was a suspense book, and I found one, a publisher that I queried through that effort, and that ended up with that book being published. And then my new book, The Inhabitants with Regal House, I was really impressed with their books, and I sent a submission, and they were interested. So it's definitely taken persistence. But I should say, in background to all this, there was just so much rejection. I feel like with every single, I'm probably telling, you've heard this a million times, but short stories, essays, books, you just have to really steel yourself to get a lot of rejection. And then sometimes I would see, like, the rare acceptance would come into my email, and I think, oh, it's another rejection. You're already steeled to think that you're going to get rejected. So it's definitely, that was definitely part of it too. So, but
I do know. So one of my authors that I had on at the very beginning, he was a like chapter book writer. He said that he had 254 rejections. And then he now has 50 books published. Um,
wow.
yeah, like once he was able to get the first one published, then like they wanted more and more, and it's a series. And he like I cannot think of his name off the top of my head. I can picture him as clear as day, but I cannot think of his name. I wish I could say it, but he writes about Minecraft books, and
Oh,
Mark Cheverton, that's what's his name.
okay.
And but he writes for middle grade. And yeah, but he said he had 254 rejections, and his son made a chart, and then now he has over 50 published. So
That's great.
persistence.
His story is like, it's so, I mean, it's so, um, it's mind blowing, but on the other hand, I totally buy that. I mean, I've had, that similar experience, but that's so great that, it speaks to the persistence that you have to have, and even stubbornness, right? About just feeling
Yeah.
like you want to get your work out there.
To be fair, he said that he knows why he was rejected the 254 times, because he had a lot of learning he had to do, and he actually rewrote. So like he says he understands why. And
That's
some
a
of
big
it's
part of the process too, though, right? Because sometimes you're lucky enough to get a rejection with some comments, or you just have a sense that on your own over time that you look back at your pages and you're like, yeah, this needs work. So yeah, you're right. I mean, good can come out of those rejections too, for sure.
so you talked a little bit about marketing. What are some of the things that you have found that works for marketing, and what are some things that you have found that does not work, specifically with the Gothic fiction?
Yeah, yeah. So it's so hard, it's such a hard question because you know what? I've never been able to tie specific things I've done with marketing to directly to sales. So it's so hard to tell. But I think that the things that were I feel like maybe I'll just say that I feel like I have more of a personal connection with, that I feel like I've gotten at least some response, or people said that, they reacted in some way, is our podcast. Like, that's been just such a great venue, I think, because I think in a way, someone can read your book or pick up your book and have a look at it. But I think sometimes, I guess I'm speaking for myself. Like, I'm a big podcast, I just love podcasts. I listen to a ton of them, and there's something about hearing the writer or the artist or the musician or whatever speaking about their work that might resonate with me more when I'm thinking about what I want to, choose for entertainment next. And I feel like having that connection, like, I think podcasts are a great way to do that. And then just sort of something else about my own, kind of like what I like working on is I love it if I can write like essays or other works that, they might mention my book in passing, but they're more kind of like a maybe think piece or essay that will be interesting in and of itself. And I enjoy writing those kind of things. And I feel like maybe that's kind of a way to get readers interested. Like I was telling you about the piece I wrote about, where I talked about mediums. Actually, crime reads picked that up, so that was nice. So it was kind of a nice way to, and I don't know, who knows if I got any sales from that at all, but it was nice to be able to share that experience with readers and hope that maybe it made them think about their own kind of spooky experiences too. Um, so those are just a couple of things. I've tried so many things that have, and who knows if they work, but those are two things that I think have been fun and enjoyable and hopefully get some people interested.
So here's a side thing about authors coming onto podcasts is first of all, if I love your book, I talk about it a lot. So this is my friend Rebecca's, and we didn't know each other till I interviewed her, but I fell in love with her book. I fell in love with her as a person. She's just an amazing person, and we now work together. But you do not know how many times I have advertised that book when I'm going to bookstores and stuff, and I see somebody sitting, and I'm like, my friend Rebecca, or another one that I often talk about is Shel Cypress, because with interviewing with the people that are interviewing you as an author, if they fall in love with your book, they're going to talk about it. And they're not just going to talk about it in the episode. Like I brought up Mark Cheverton today, and I just brought up, Rebecca Hartwell, and Rebecca Maeve Hartwell, that's her author name, and Shel Cypress, and like I just randomly will say these names, and people I think pick up on it and like, who? And then after interviews, sometimes I will have my authors that I interview be like, they'll say, you brought up this person. What was the book title again? And then again, and so like even it's not just about who the audience is, but it's also about just finding somebody who loves fantasy or who loves reading and having them fall in love with your book, because chances are they're going to read your book. I have a big stack of books that I have that I slowly go through. And anyway, that was just a side note. And another big part is the community that plays a huge part. So I have a question for you. What role has community played in your writing journey? And is there a way, do you have like a writing tribe or um, people that you really connect with?
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked about that because community is such a huge thing for me. I mean, I'm fortunate to have just over the years, just by meeting different writers under different circumstances and going to readings, and I've actually just made a lot of dear friends in the local writing community, um it's just such it's so wonderful to have that support, the moral support, but also just it's been some really great friendships. And, I used to, for years, I had a writing group. I want to say we met for 20 years. And it was kind of like we'd shed cells every now and then. Like some people would have to leave, but then new people would come in. And that went on for a long time. And eventually it kind of fell apart. People moved and they're, had children and so on and so forth. But that being said, there's still folks in that orbit where, I'll say, hey, I have a new novel. Would you mind, reading it and giving me some comments? And we do that. We exchange, our work, and that's just so immeasurably helpful. And then if you probably had other interviewees talk about this, but sometimes you might be down in the dumps, having a dark night of the soul and thinking, oh, I can't finish this book, or this thing is a piece of crap. And it's just good to be able to have that community. So for me, that has been, I that might even have should have been the first thing I mentioned when we got together, is community, 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 because it's just so important. It really is.
I agree with that. And I think it's also just for motivation too, not just even like critiquing and stuff, but just having somebody that walks alongside you that's doing the same thing as you. I do need to wrap up, but I do want to ask one more question. It's a variation of the question I ask everybody, but what advice would you give to writers who are considering either writing in the horror genre or just writing and publishing in general that you wish you would have known before you had started your first book?
Yeah, I mean, I think like this thing gets repeated so often, I'm sure, but I think like if you're thinking of writing in a genre in particular, I think, gosh, read in the genre as much as you can. And I also think I would say that going back to community, find your community. And, I think, if you're in I live in Boston, so you can find, there's enough, the writing community is big enough that you can usually find people who write in your genre, for support and critiques. And also I think, this is like, there's so many other things I could say about craft and this and that, but I'd say entertain yourself first. Like, I feel like any book that I'm writing, like, I feel like if I'm feeling like I'm interested and intrigued and excited about what's going on, there are a better chance that readers will be too. And if you can find way to have fun, entertain yourself, then it's gonna make it easy. Your book, I think your writing will reflect that more. So yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Beth, for being on here. I really do appreciate it. Again, you guys, if you want to check out her books, you can go to her website, bethcastrodale.com. I actually just pulled it up because I wanted to make sure I said the name right. And if you scroll down on the home screen, you will get to, and this was the name I was referring to, not her name. Gold River is free for a limited time. If you wanted to check out her work for free, you can sign up for her newsletter, and I'm sure she will give you book updates as well. Otherwise, you can go to Amazon or anywhere that sells books and check out The Inhabitants. Also, I wanted to remind you that we do have the spring and summer book giveaways going on right now, authorsalcove.org. Her book will be listed in the next couple of days as soon as I receive it. And then I'll have to let you guys know what I think of it as well. And if you'd like exclusive content and to support the show, head over to patreon.com/authors alcove, or you can join us at our writing, the fantasy writing accountability group on Facebook. I will have the link in the show notes. Again, Beth, thank you so much for being on here. I really do
Oh,
appreciate it.
thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
All
Take
right,
care.
I'm